morning, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Environmental Social Justice. I'm your host, Wendy Nystrom. Today's special guest is Catherine Greener. She is the Chief Sustainability Catalyst and founder of Greener Solutions. So welcome to the show.
Thank you, Wendy. It's great to be here.
Anytime. And you know, you and I have had fabulous conversations in the past, so now we're actually putting it into a recording because you're fun. You have an amazing background. You have 20 years in the sustainability industry, which is hard to come by. A lot of people are experts, but they don't have that longevity that you have. So just real quick, if you could dive into hospitality, food and beverage, automotive, chemical, semi-conductor, facility automation, and construction. That's pretty wide-ranging background.
Well, it's a great list. And it also includes textiles, as I was doing some reflection the other day.
Oh.
And in full disclosure, you know, we always say 20 plus. It's almost 30 years now.
Oh, wow.
And it's humbling, and it's also frightening in a way. When I started, well, I started down this path. When I started down this path, and it was really a second career, I thought we had time.
Oh.
And I'm not going to be Debbie Downer, though I will sprinkle our conversations with a little bit of reality. For those of you who are listening who remember your calculus, we're going to spend a little time in that delta T, the slope of the curve, because that's really important in finding solutions. So I'm going to take a little wander through the labyrinth of my career. You know, when I'm always impressed by young people right now when they start off and they say, I know I want to be. And bless their hearts, are starting out well-intentioned. They're in sustainability classes. And I wish I knew about, well, wait, sustainability didn't exist when I was graduating.
Me neither.
So I graduated as an industrial engineer, and I went to work for the world's largest corporation at the time, General Motors. Yeah, most people are like, what? I know. When we talk about who are the...
Another Michigander, folks.
And I started my career as a maintenance supervisor at Pontiac Motors, one of the first women in maintenance as a supervisor. And it taught me a lot of lessons that I have taken with me, including the power of people to find solutions locally and surrounded by the problems that they face every single day. So I worked at General Motors for a few years, but while I was at General Motors, they sent me to just-in-time school at General Electric, my first business trip. Got to learn all about this emergent field of just-in-time. And just-in-time, as we know it right now, is really about, you know, inventory management. But the time when we were being schooled in it, it was about the elimination of waste. And it was about teams and how do you have high-performance teams to eliminate this concept of waste, because you can't have just-in-time inventory and an effective system if you have waste. So I became obsessed with waste and still am. After General Motors, I was lucky enough to join an Ernst & Young practice in Detroit, the emergent just-in-time manufacturing practice at Ernst & Young.
That's cool.
And fell in love with total quality management. Again, emergent. It's the 80s. And like this field, I can combine my systems love with statistics. I can talk about that later, with even my love of trying to fix cost accounting. They all fit really nicely into this, and understanding how to read numbers to tell a story.
Very important.
Very, very important.
Yeah.
Going back to, all right, for those of you listening, you can tell where we can easily start applying this to our work in sustainability. And I spent a lot of my career in Detroit working in total quality management. Got my Six Sigma black belt and became more and more obsessed with this concept of waste. Why is there waste? What are externalities anyway? It's just a human construct. Because in the world, there isn't a place for externalities. You know, what is that anyway when you think about it? No, we're part of one big system. And as I was deep into the world of total quality management, I started observing, and especially because I was doing a lot of international work, this emergent field of sustainable development. And I saw the connection between waste and what happens to waste, and not just as waste as we think about it in a landfill and that, but also the waste of human potential. Because if you go into the quality 7 sins of waste, there's a lot of connection to human systems.
Yeah.
So I had this hypothesis. if you really believe that we live in a closed system, there is no planet B right now. We're trying to find it. There's no way.
There's
And
no way.
we live in this closed system, then wouldn't all these rules and tools that we have in total quality management apply to this emerging field of sustainability? Luckily, I had a chance to try my hypothesis out. I had an opportunity through some nonprofit work that I was doing in Detroit to meet Amos Levins of Rocky Mountain Institute. He said, meet me at a soft tooling manufacturing in Western Michigan. Let's do a walkthrough. So I walked through and he said, I like this. Okay. Natural Capitalism had just come out. I had just read 𝐤𝐫𝐞𝐞𝐫. And there was a chapter especially that intrigued me on service muda, waste, and the flow. But when I read Natural Capitalism, I put the book down and said, I know how to do this. I said that to Amory. And he said, well, not a lot of people have that reaction. Would you like to come and try it out at Rocky Mountain Institute? So I went to Detroit, Aspen. Okay, I think I'll give Aspen a go.
Worlds apart.
On so many levels. Yeah, they had to take this urban girl and turn her into a mountain girl pretty quickly. So while I was at Rocky Mountain Institute, I had the opportunity to continue to apply that hypothesis of waste in the form and what that would look like.
Yeah.
And when we think about the sustainability, and everyone says, what is sustainability anyway? I draw a parallel again to my quality work. Yeah. And the way that we define what is something that's a quality, there's actually 7 to 8 different definitions of quality. Conformance to specification. Then there's just the perception. I know it when I see it. And I can go on and on, reliability, etc. So when we think about sustainability, there's more than one definition, as we know. But also in quality, when we can't define what is quality, then you ask the 1- question. What is unquality? Or what is poor quality?
Yeah. So
I think it's really easy to think about what is sustainability by first defining what is the unsustainable.
Yes, that's a very good point.
Oh,
that is a much easier way to think about it, because people do ask, like, I don't know what that means. I was like, you know what? I get it. It's a hard concept.
Yeah, and it's not exactly the world's greatest word to describe as maintaining life as we know it.
Yeah.
So if you think about that, so when you start to just think about what is unsustainable, I've actually run workshops for years around this, where you actually go into product design and you say, all right, let's design the most unsustainable. And I have a little couple of exercises on a very common household object. And you do it by the unsustainable, and people get it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then once you have that list, you just switch it and say, I now want to design the most sustainable household object. And it opens up because you have the list of things you have to change. It's a really easy way to do a gap analysis. So from Rocky Mountain Institute, moved to Colorado and been in and out of different forms of consulting, working with lots of different industries, which you definitely pointed out in the introduction. And sometimes on a couple of occasions when I was working with a client, they brought me in-house. Both from a hospitality, when I had an opportunity to be Vice President of Sustainability and Environmental Affairs at Xanterra Travel Collection, and then Chief Sustainability Officer for Do Good Foods.
Wow. You definitely have an impressive background. So what made you want to start up your own business, Greener Solutions, and helping these companies move forward?
Well, part of it was the universe saying, there was a massive recession. That was the first when I actually founded Greener Solutions. I was working for Saatchi and Saatchi Sustainability Services, 2008. The recession hit, and I formed Greener Solutions as a way to continue to do the work when Saatchi and Saatchi decided that perhaps sustainability consulting wasn't their core business and advertising was.
Shocking.
So I started Greener Solutions, and I love the opportunity to work with different industries and to create real impact and real change within these companies, not just change that is required by reporting requirements, etc., but seeing real impact. And I'm still obsessed with the elimination of waste.
Yeah. The elimination, that is a huge topic, and we've covered this many times on ESJ, is most, as you said, there is no away. So to clarify what that means is when people say they throw things away, there is no away. It's just going somewhere where you can no longer see it. And it no longer affects you. So it's not a solution. It's simply moving it to a different location. And we need to stop with the throwing away by starting at the beginning, by not having stuff that's always disposable. So make it right the first time.
You know, that single-use fill in the blank absolutely makes no sense whatsoever.
Yeah.
I think about, no, I should say I'm obsessed with the concept of landfills. Let's say that we are archaeologists or anthropologists 20,000 years in the future. When you discover these huge mounds outside of former, maybe even still existing urban centers, we don't know what language we're going to be speaking in 20,000 years or what it'll look like. Might just be machine learning, you know, code or something like that. However, you know, the archaeologists will start digging through these mounds and they will be finding polystyrene. And under that, they might still find, because of the anaerobic nature, a banana, and then some precious metals and some things that found the way. And they will be stumped. And they will think back to our culture and they will say, why did these people bury these amazingly valuable BTUs? And they will turn to each other and say, perhaps it was religious, because that will be the only way that makes sense on why we would design a system to bury perfectly good resources. Makes no sense whatsoever.
Yeah, I mean, just I'm kind of afraid of what they'll think of us with all the stuff that they find that we threw away. It's like, why would they throw so much stuff away that actually could be useful or reused or repurposed? But no, it made more sense to bin it, remine something, recreate something. It's mind-boggling at times.
Well, speaking about mind-boggling, let's like dive a little bit more into what happens from a landfill perspective. And my work with 𝐤𝐫𝐞𝐞𝐬 Foods, the company unfortunately no longer exists. We're maybe a little early, but it's still a great idea. We were able to upcycle surplus grocery waste, turn it into an animal feed, and divert millions of pounds of usable nutrients from that landfill and feed it to chickens. We were able to create the first third-party verified carbon-reduced animal protein. But we were also able to get a third-party verified methodology for accounting for short-lived climate pollutants, mostly around methane. It's a lot of mouthful of words there.
That's actually really cool because, yeah, it is before its time. I mean, when you talk about Saatchi & Saatchi, you know, advertising firm that went to sustainability, I think they were before their time.
Correct.
Because people weren't ready yet. They didn't understand the urgency. They didn't understand what it was. And, you know, honestly, the reason I started ESJ, we're terrible at discussing it. We're terrible at explaining it. We use terminology that nobody understands. And that's why I always tell people, no acronyms, no jargon. We have to do a better job of explaining it simply so people understand, one, it's possible, and two, you know, why it's important. And that's what you were doing a really good job at that, actually. I mean, I was just looking at everything that you do. And just so people understand, with Greener Solutions, her chief sustainability officer work can also be fractional employee work, meaning you don't have to hire her to do 100% of the job at the time. As you need the solutions done, she provides your solutions. And having the last name Greener is very, very useful.
It is. I come self-branded from that perspective.
You do. And you provide all these. I mean, just I really want to focus on, you know, carbon strategies and reporting. So let's keep that. Let's go on the thread of simple. What is carbon strategies?
So carbon strategies can also be you know, thought of as to reduce the carbon associated with your business would be decarbonization. And then you can look at the valorization of carbon, such as upcycling, and being able to say, I want to work on the avoided emissions by using my product or process. So you can say, all right, how do you get more value or avoid emissions from going into the atmosphere in the first place? But looking at carbon as a metric to have a strategy. Carbon can also be used as a proxy for waste, too much of a good thing. So it can be used to uncover waste. So let's say I have worked with or companies in even in mining fossil fuel once upon a time. And in doing so, when you think about flaring operations, and if you look at all the carbon and things like that,
Yeah.
from a quality perspective, isn't that just valuable product and somewhere in the process? So how do you use carbon as a proxy to also eliminate waste?
Interesting. Because flare outs, I see those often. I live in California.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of refineries, and some of them on a highway, and you'll see those flares, those flames going. Like, do you need to do it that way?
Well, that's a much longer conversation, but a lot of those processes were designed when you didn't have the emissions associated with the combustion of the product right there at the source.
Yeah.
And that is product. So you have to look at redesigning, or how I often call it is reinventing the process to get to the value add. I've been working on the thought of reinventing everything.
Of course.
From that, because you see me post about reinventing everything, and I call out companies that are doing that and thinking about it differently. I'm saying, all right, what if you could design a fill in the blank that could be recycled forever? What would that look like? What would it look like if I would design a food system that had no waste to landfill? What would that look like?
That would be very cool.
What would be a textile that was ultimately always recyclable and had no adverse effects to the environment? We're thinking about the microplastics we're learning about in some of our fibers now.
Oh, yes. Most people don't realize most of your clothes have microplastics in them. We'll just put that out there.
So there's a lot of exciting work out there using carbon, or using a precautionary principle, or these big idea design principles to come up with ideas. And that's some of the work that I've also done in the years to help facilitate some of this thinking by asking these questions. What if? And again, pulling a lot from my quality background. One of the two biggest questions, or I guess, what problem are we trying to solve? So we're not just focusing on a symptom. And then what if, and you put a crazy idea on the back end of that statement, and watch the innovation and the design juices flow.
Love it. And I do appreciate the fact that you ask people what their thoughts are without just, this is what I'm going to tell you what to do. You actually throw it out there of, give me your thoughts back. Let's think about it. And that's where your coaching comes in, actually. You do a lot of coaching with people to help them figure it out and learn on their own so they can actually do these things, because it's going to be necessary. Everything we do in life going forward is going to have that thought process in there.
I've been blessed to have amazing coaches, both on the field as a soccer player, and then some amazing mentors in my life. And I think that I'm at that point in my career, in my life, where I'm enjoying turning around and helping a hand and mentoring both men and women, in this space, because we don't have time for everyone to just reinvent the processes over and over again. And it's up to us, for those of us who've been in the field for decades, to then say, I have those templates, I have those processes, stop. No, do not. Here, let me give this to you.
Yes. Preach. I mean, that's one of my complaints, for lack of a better term, in this field, is we have a lot of new people coming in saying, I'm going to figure it out. It's like, well, we have a template, because, this has been around for a lot longer than 10 years, 15 years. People like Catherine have been working on this, have been solving the problems. Why don't you give Catherine a call? Ask her what she thinks. She'll ask you to collaborate, and then the ultimate solution will present itself. We need to stop fractioning this into many different little pieces with many different people, all thinking that they're the only ones that can work on it. It's more, we have to do this in a collaborative environment.
Yes, ma'am.
That is the most important thing. And we're not doing a great job at that.
Operationalizing sustainability instead of reporting on sustainability. 2024 is the year of action. And I think all of us can say, how can we operationalize this? I had a boss who used to say, put it into 5 things, and he used to pull his hand up and say, how we do our business.
Ooh.
And, it's really simple. How do you put sustainability into how we do our business? If it was 6 words, I'd have to pull up my name, but yeah, 5.
I'm just grateful to the fact you have such great mentors, because I think that's very important, especially with someone new in the industry. And mentoring that forward. I don't know if you're open to more mentors, but I'm just going to throw it out there. If
yes, I am.
Or mentees, rather.
I learn more from my mentees, I think, than they learn from me, to be perfectly honest.
Really?
Hmm.
Are these just because they're young and they're fresh out of school and they're wide-eyed and full of ideas?
There's some of that. It depends on who or what the situation is. I'm mentoring an amazing young woman at the Farm Link Project. It's an organization that reclaims food on field. It's a nonprofit, and they're able to then bring that food from field to community donations, feeding people in need. They've already recovered over 200 million pounds. We work together on carbon accounting and other things, and she's young. Her name's Julie DeSantis, and she helps me with hope a lot of times.
Awesome.
She helps me with possibilities. She has a level of optimism that us older, more cynical and jaded individuals might not see that opportunity for hope.
But we desperately need that reinforced in our little jaded worlds because we need that influx of hope to come back into us. Because, I mean, again, you and I, we started around doing all of this stuff when nobody cared.
Mm-hmm.
I had people tell, because I was environmental insurance, environmental risk, and people said, just change your job path. No one cares. You're going to be out of a job, figure something else out. And I stuck with it. And the interesting part is now it's very important. And, all those people that probably listened to that bad advice and went into other lines of insurance, actually the environmental is now very important, especially the environmental risk.
Mm-hmm.
And, Catherine, what you do is a big portion of environmental risk because you are trying to mitigate or stop that
Absolutely.
risk before the damage happens. And that's another service you offer is that risk, oddly enough, risk management is something you do as well.
Mm-hmm.
Without a doubt.
Without a doubt. But we move through identification of risk into actions for mediation and then restoration.
Yeah.
If we stop at risk, we're just watching the decline of what we love.
Yeah.
But when we move forward into actions and progress, I do believe that we have the solutions to make the changes.
Yeah, and it's just there's a lot and people do get overwhelmed and they don't know where to start. And I think we would get a lot more engagement if we just helped people, like your coaching skills, help people take that first step and realize it's not that scary. It's not that hard. It's these little changes that you do that makes that progress forward. And as you said, every little product that's made, people who are on the packaging or the manufacturing side, what can we do to make this a little bit different so it's not a waste? So it's not something thrown away. So something can be recycled over and over again. Or the food waste, which is huge in this country.
It's a sin. It really is.
Let's just eat less. How about that? Let's grab less because we're not eating it, we're throwing it away.
Well, it's actually most of the food waste is not at the consumer level.
It's grocery level.
It's built in, a lot of the food waste is built into the process. What happens at farm, what happens at retail, what happens, in transportation. I mean, sure, there is definitely food waste and from a demand and what happens when you leave that funk in the back of the refrigerator and you don't know it. Sure, but it's really an entire process.
Yeah.
And
well, I mean, I've never worked in that industry. I mean, I do know of somebody who works with local schools with their composting. And when the school, I guess the people who run the cafeteria, the chefs, when they realized how much food was getting thrown away into the compost, they started cutting back on how much food that they were dishing out because kids weren't eating it. And like, you can come back for seconds if you're hungry, but let's start with what you can eat first and then come back. So that's also important. And the food production cycle is pretty interesting.
Yeah, it's remarkable what happens, the system design to what happens on field. And a lot of times the farmers are facing the brunt of some of those food excesses that happen in it. And that's one of the last demographics that we want. But you think about the invested human capital that goes into growing our food if it doesn't reach that destination, the energy that goes into the planting and the cultivating and the harvesting, and then even the processing, and then if it gets wasted. So we have that part of the sin. Then you have the energy that goes into it from a mostly fossil fuel and fertilizer, and then the transportation. when avocados are stacked and then they roll and hit the ground, or a broccoli stem hits the ground at the grocery store, it doesn't go back up, it gets thrown out. So all the ways to from in the system, how do you transport that it doesn't get damaged in transportation?
Yeah.
It is remarkable, especially when we have so much food insecurity in our country.
Yeah, I mean, that's why I'm a huge advocate for more local farms. Not everyone's going to have the ability to do a micro farm. Okay, I get it. But if we just had more local sourced materials, that would be fantastic. It would solve a lot of these transportation issues. Also, the freshness of food, the quality of the food is important as well, because we do an awful lot of processing here that's not the healthiest. You go to other countries, they kind of figured it out.
That's very true.
And you do a lot of, I want to keep talking about you specifically in your work, because you do quite a bit in every genre imaginable, including executive engagement, I believe. You work with executives and coaching them as well, and working on projects and helping them get these projects done in a sustainable manner. Could you explain what that really entails?
Well, depending on the organization and depending on the executive team,
Yeah.
is trying to understand how to, first of all, there's a translation of our alphabet soup, disclosure requirements, things everyone's talking about. And then you have to peel it back. And there's a lot of misconceptions and conceptions around what is truth and what isn't truth. So you peel that away.
Mm-hmm.
You relate to, all right, what are the requirements? What are your missions? Where do you want to go? I tie it back into operations. So you can say, how much waste does it take from an OPEX? We'll improve your OPEX, and start to work with the financial metrics of the organization to help propel the either decarbonization or actions around climate change or ESG, depending on the approach.
Yeah.
And translating it into the metrics of the organization.
Which is important, 'cause I don't think a lot of people focus on that necessarily. I think a lot of people, they do try to do that one size fits all. And it's yeah.
It's not.
Yeah.
And in fact, it's actually, every company has its own cadence, its own language, and its own culture.
Yeah.
And in several of the large engagements I've done for technical and even non-technical companies, we'll come in and we'll actually do a quick discovery on some of those lexicons of the organization and cadences. So if you're trying to put sustainability initiatives into a budget, what is the budget cycle? How is it coded? What does it look like? What's that return look like? You can't propose something if you don't understand that. That's part of the operationalization. But then when you start talking the same language, you're not as scary.
Yes. Well, that's why we also need the translating that you offer, because perfect example, there's a man I know, the company Navigating Gray, he's training his daughter on how to, one, do business, but to read ESG reports. So he gave her like 20 or 30 of them. And 16-year-old kids reading 20, 30 ESG reports. He said, what do you see? Tell me what you see, just now that you've read them all. And she said, they all say the same thing. They all said the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
It was copy, paste, copy, paste. We're going to do all these awesome things. We have no idea how, but we're going to be neutral by 20. Don't know how. And that's where we kind of saw that stumbling block with ESGs. We had people who didn't really know how to do this, but they were tasked with the job of get this out the door now. And that's why we need people like Catherine Greener to help them figure it out, because every company is different and how they approach it will be different. And what they need to report on will be different. And now the SEC has voted on this.
And should be different.
It should be different, yes. So you offer a myriad of services that could pretty much cover every facility known to man. How would people find you? What's the best way to people connect with you?
The best way to connect with me is to go to my website at greenersolutionsinc.com.
Easy name to remember, Greener Solutions.
Greener Solutions. When your last name is Greener, it made branding really easy.
And you got into the environmental world. I mean, this was kind of like a foregone conclusion.
I guess so. I didn't know that until my first midlife crisis, where I said, all right, it's time for the greening of greener.
Ooh. I like that. I like that. And you used your midlife crisis in a positive way.
Yeah, I got myself to Colorado.
Oh, I love Colorado. Although I did some hiking not recently, but I was on a business trip and I decided to walk to the office instead of take a taxi, and I was winded because I live in California, where my highest elevation where I am right now is probably 23 feet, and I went to the mountains. It was rough, not gonna lie.
No, but you acclimate over time.
I did. No, I was fine. I just got there and I was just like, okay, I need a moment, need some water. But no, Catherine, thank you so much. What you're doing is amazing work. You have this incredible background that very, very few people have. And trust me, I've done over 300 interviews. I've talked to a ton of people. Your background is extremely unique, and you have an insight that very few people have. So please, guys, check out Catherine Greener, Greener Solutions. It is important that you find her. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Wendy. It's been delightful to spend time with you.
Anytime. And guys, I'm Wendy Nystrom, your host with Environmental Social Justice. We'll catch you next time. Take care. Bye.